was young and sweet, as young perhaps as herself. She wondered who it was. She put the miniature back in place with a caressing hand. She felt that she would like to know this woman with the tender eyes. She wished her here now, that she might tell her all her anxiety. Her eye wandered to the pile of letters, some of them official-looking ones, one or two in square, perfumed envelopes with high, angular writing. They were all addressed to Mr. Cyril Gordon. That was strange. Who was Mr. Cyril Gordon? What had she to do with him? Was he a friend whom they were visiting for a few days? It was all bewildering. Then the telephone rang. Her heart beat wildly, and she looked toward it as if it had been a human voice speaking, and she had no power to answer. What should she do now? Should she answer, or should she wait for the man to come? Could the man hear the telephone bell, or was she perhaps expected to answer? And yet, if Mr. Cyril Gordon... Well, somebody ought to answer. The phone rang insistently once more, and still a third time. What if he should be calling her? Perhaps he was in distress. This thought sent her flying to the phone. She took down the receiver and called, "Hello," and her voice sounded far away to herself. "Is this Mr. Gordon's apartment?" "Yes," she answered, for her eyes were resting on the pile of letters close at hand. "Is Mr. Gordon there?" "No, he is not," she answered, growing more confident now, and almost wishing she had not presumed to answer a stranger's phone. "Why, I just phoned to the office, and they told me he had returned," said a voice that had an imperious note in it. "Are you sure he isn't there?" "Quite sure," she replied. "Who is this, please?" "I beg your pardon," said Celia, trying to make time, and knowing not how to reply. She was not any longer Miss Hathaway. Who was she? Mrs. Hane? She shrank from the name. It was filled with horror for her. "Who is this, I said?" snapped the other voice now. "Is this the chambermaid? Because if it is, I'd like you to look around and inquire and be quite sure that Mr. Gordon isn't there. I wish to speak with him about something very important." Celia smiled. "No, this is not the chambermaid," she said sweetly, "and I am quite sure Mr. Gordon is not here." "How long before he will be there?" "I don't know, really, for I have but just come myself." "Who is this to whom I am talking?" "Why, just a friend," she answered, wondering if that were the best thing to say. "Oh." There was a long and contemplative pause at the other end. "Well, could you give Mr. Gordon a message when he comes in?" "Why, certainly, I think so. Who's this?" "Miss Bentley, Julia Bentley. He'll know," replied the imperious one eagerly now. "And tell him, please, that he is expected here to dinner to night. We need him to complete the number, and he simply mustn't fail me. I'll excuse him for going off in such a rush if he comes early and tells me all about it. Now you won't forget, will you? You got the name Bentley, did you? Bentley, you know. And you'll tell him the minute he comes in?" "Yes." "Thank you. What did you say your name was?" But Celia had hung up. Somehow the message annoyed her. She could not tell why. She wished she had not answered the phone. Whoever Mr. Cyril Gordon was, what should she do if he should suddenly appear? And as for this imperious lady and her message, she hoped she would never have to deliver it. On second thought, why not write it and leave it on his desk with the pile of letters? She would do it. It would serve to pass away a few of these dreadful minutes that lagged so distressfully. She sat down and wrote: "Miss Bentley wishes Mr. Gordon to dine with her this evening. She will pardon his running away the other day if he will come early." She laid it beside the high, angular writing on the square, perfumed letters, and went back to the leather chair, too restless to rest, yet too weary to stand up. She went presently to the back windows to look out, and then to the side ones. Across the housetops she could catch a glimpse of domes and buildings. There was the Congressional Library, which usually delighted her with its exquisite tones of gold and brown and white. But she had no eyes for it now. Beyond were more buildings, all set in the lovely foliage, which was much farther developed than it had been in New York State. From another window she could get a glimpse of the Potomac shining in the morning sun. She wandered to the front windows and looked out. There were people passing and repassing. It was a busy street, but she could not make out whether it was one she knew or not. There were two men walking back and forth on the opposite side. They did not go further than the corner of the street either way. They looked across at the windows sometimes and pointed up when they met, and once one of them took something out of his pocket and flashed it under his coat at his side, as if to have it ready for use. It reminded her of the thing her husband had held in his hand in the bedroom, and she shuddered. She watched them fascinated, not able to draw herself away from the window. Now and then she would go to the rear window to see if there was any sign of the automobile returning, and then hurry back to the front to see if the men were still there. Once she returned to the chair, and lying back, shut her eyes and let the memory of yesterday sweep over her in all its sweet details, up to the time when they had got into the way train and she had seemed to feel her disloyalty to her father. But now her heart was all on the other side, and she began to feel that there had been some dreadful mistake somewhere, and he was surely all right. He could not have written those terrible letters. Then again, the details of their wild carriage ride in Pittsburgh and miraculous escape haunted her. There was something strange and unexplained about that which she must understand. End of chapter 14.